What is going on, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG video, where today I'm joined by two special guests coming off of their recent top 8 performance at the Dallas Regional Championship. Up to the right side of your screen, up above, we have Jimmy Pendarvis. How's it going, Jimmy?
Hello. It's good to be here.
And down below, we have Brad Curcio. How's it going, Brad?
Pretty good, man.
Awesome. Well, congratulations to both you guys. You both piloted this Drampa, Tauros, Garbodor Parallels deck to a top 8 finish this past weekend. Super strong finish from both of you, as well as Igor Costa, Azul Garcia Griego, and Ryan Sablehouse, all three other big-named players playing the deck. So anytime big names bring a deck into a tournament, it seems to do pretty well. So congrats to you guys, and yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and start off by asking you guys about the deck building process, where your kind of head space was like when creating the deck. I'm assuming most things started off with the meta in San Jose, the most recent expanded regionals prior to this. Did you guys both go to San Jose?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
And Jimmy, what did you play in San Jose?
I played my Bay Sableye Garbodor. Things did not go as well as they previously had, though. The meta had shifted a little bit. There was a bit more Getsis, a bit more Seismitoad text, and just a bit more Night March, which isn't like the worst matchup, but it's one of the only decks that can't really like lock into place. So, like you can get the Trick Shovel thing going, but they have more outs and they're a bit more aggressive, so it's a bit rough.
And Brad, what did you play in San Jose?
I played Night March, the same 60 as Azul.
Cool. Yeah. So you both decided to kind of take a change of pace here by, Brad played a really aggressive deck, Jimmy playing kind of a control deck, and I think this deck kind of fits somewhere in the middle of those things. You're kind of controlling the stuff your opponent's doing, but at the same time, you do have some aggression there through things like Tauros, and later on in the game, super aggressive with Trash and Lance Garbodor. So I'll go ahead and start with Brad if you want to talk about kind of the deck building process and where your guys' headspace was when you were creating the deck leading up to the tournament.
Yeah, so we had mentioned it briefly. Azul brought up, wanting to play Garbodor in parallel. Jimmy made a rough draft of the list, and then as soon as we all got to Dallas together, I think like Thursday night, we finally built it, played some games, and finished working out the final list that we all ended up deciding on. We didn't really build anything or test it at all before the tournament, before we all got there. So we just kind of had an idea and rolled with it.
Yeah, anything to add there, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, we probably played a total of like 25 games, and I played like 22 of them or something ridiculous like that. So it was mostly Theoremon, and then I just kind of made sure the deck actually functioned.
Sure.
And it worked really well. I think our list was pretty perfect.
Yeah.
So we saw kind of earlier on in the season, Brad, you played a Drampa Necrozma Garbodor deck, or not? Yeah, Drampa Necrozma Garbodor deck in Fort Wayne, and then also in Daytona. What was kind of the reasoning for the change of pace here, moving away from the Necrozma and the Dimension Valleys and moving towards Tauros and Parallel Cities?
Well, the meta shifted pretty drastically because of Zoroark. In Daytona and Fort Wayne, the meta was Turbo Turtles, Night March, a little bit of Trevenant, a little bit of bunch of different decks really. Whereas in this tournament, we only expected a ton of Zoroark. And Necrozma and the whole Dimension Valley package doesn't really fare up as well against them because you're not forcing them to really do anything. You're not forcing them to play items. So your Trash Lane is never going to one-shot a Zoroark. And Necrozma doesn't actually do enough to where you can clean up with the rest of your attackers to kill a Zoroark. So it seemed like a very, very poor matchup, which is why we didn't play it in San Jose either. So we switched over to Drampa, Parallel, a heavier or thicker Garbotoxin line, things like that, to where we could actually favor better against the Zoroark decks.
Nice. Yeah, anything else to add there about just kind of the difference between the Necrozma Garb and Drampa, this current list, Jimmy?
So we just confirmed that Necrozma Garb couldn't beat Glaceon Zoroark on Friday night. We played like a best of 3, and it was like the swiftest 2-0 I've ever seen Glaceon Zoroark give a deck. Like it was real bad. Because basically what ended up happening is the Zoroark deck would just not evolve into a bunch of GXs, and that kind of shuts down the whole Necrozma and then Espeon strategy, which I think we had in the deck. Without things like Tauros, Drampa, Parallel City, the deck doesn't need to play any items. It can even just pass at some points without having to do much of anything. And as long as they don't dump too many items, you have like no good attacker against them.
Yeah.
So in Daytona, there was a lot of other, kind of different options as far as attackers go. You had Mew from Fates Collide to copy other basic Pokemon attacks, and also running the Mimikyu with the copycat attack to copy your opponent's attacks. What led to you guys deciding that those weren't worth spots in this current deck? You can start off with this one, Jimmy.
Well, while those Pokemon are still good attackers and they would have been great inclusions in the deck, the issue is that we didn't play Dimension Valley. So putting 2 energies on each of them is kind of rough. And then with this version, Garbotoxin was something that we wanted on the field at all times, as opposed to just kind of here and there. So the Mew doesn't really get as much value either.
Sure.
I think that's really the only reasoning.
Yeah, no Dimension Valley definitely makes those a lot worse. And also another interesting thing, you decided to go with a split of the Trebushes this time, playing 3 copies of Tool Drop Trubbish and 1 copy of the Garbage Collection Trubbish. Put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. There's, I think like 5 different Trubbishes to choose from in the expanded format. Do you guys want to talk about the different ones that you guys thought about and what led you to go to the 3-1 split of Tool Drop and Garbage Collection?
So we originally had 4 Trubbish, Tool Drop Trubbish, but Friday night we ended up putting in Bunnelby. And then later in the night when we were all going to go to sleep, I was like, I don't know about this Bunnelby, guys. Like, well, what do we think about the Wailord situation? And everyone else was kind of like, yeah, the Bunnelby feel kind of bad. So I was like, what if we just take out Bunnelby, but then also put in 1 Garbage Collection Trubbish? And then we replaced the Bunnelby with Super Rod, which was one of the other cards we were considering. And that way you can kind of like Garbage Collection the Super Rod every single turn on top of the deck against Wailord. And even though the strategy isn't like foolproof, it's better than nothing. And the Garbage Collection also has 1 retreat, so there were a few different bonuses.
Sure.
Yep.
Were there other ones you guys considered as far as like Acid Spray or Pound or the Stomp Off Trubbish?
Not really. We still wanted Tool Drop to deal with Night March and kind of like Wobbuffet. We expected some Groudon, stuff like that, so Tool Drop is still very good against them. And then against Night March, they'll have the Dimension Valley, so Tool Drop will actually be activated a lot easier.
Sure. Okay, cool. So that kind of breaks down most of the more interesting stuff about the deck. I do want to ask about the single copy of Bridget. Did you guys ever find that was too few? Most decks nowadays, it seems that people are playing that second copy to not only increase the chances that you have it in your opening hand, but also to decrease the chances of prizing your out to Bridget turn 1. Did you guys find that one to be a good enough count for this deck?
Yeah.
Well, I would have loved to have a second one, honestly, but the space was pretty tight. And it really only mattered when you prized it, which happened to me once where it was unfortunate, but I still ended to a second Trubbish, and it wasn't a huge deal.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to get like 3 Ralts or 3 Zaruas or something like that, like every other deck does. You want to get, obviously you want to get as many Trubbish as possible or whatever, but like with 1 Trubbish in play, you can evolve it to Garbotoxin because Trash Lynch isn't going to be too relevant until later in the game. So as long as you're able to find like 1 Trubbish and then something to attack with, whether it be Lele, Drampa, Tauros, or something else, it's okay. If anything, I probably would have put like a Lily or something to do for like another turn 1 supporter.
Okay.
I don't think I would have put a second Bridget though.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so moving on from that, we can jump into day 1 of the tournament. Or actually, back it up a little bit from there. Let's talk about just the night before the tournament. Were there other decks either of you guys were considering playing, or were you kind of like by Friday night set on, hey, this is the deck I'm going to go with? You can start us off, Jimmy. Yeah,
by Friday night, I was 100% going to be playing this deck. It was really just a couple cards in the list that I needed to decide on. And I think that's how it was for pretty much everyone that played it. The deck was just like super strong in the few games we played, and it seemed amazing in theory as well.
Yeah, we did like bounce around a few other ideas. Like we would bring up Sable Garb, things like that again, and then there was always just like 1 or 2 different things that just completely shut the deck down. And we just scrapped the idea and just kept moving on and working with the Garbodor deck.
Nice. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and jump into day 1 of the tournament, waking up Saturday morning. Super nice being right at the venue, not having to like wake up and drive anywhere. I know I enjoyed that. So you guys want to, you don't have to do like a whole tournament report round by round, but if you guys just want to hit on specific interesting matchups, things that stood out to you from day 1, that would be great. And we'll start with Brad on this.
Yeah, so my day 1 went pretty well. I went 8-1. I played against 3 Zoroark decks, 4 Gardevoir decks, and then an Archiestoise. So I lost to Riley because he won the tournament, and then I the Gardevoir decks are the weirdest ones because I wasn't expecting to play against too many Gardevoirs. I wouldn't have been surprised to hit one or two, but playing four literally back to back to back to back was very strange to me. But I was able to the deck is still clunky. It's still a stage 2 deck that relies heavily on ability. So Garbotoxin plus N and even Parallel City does hurt them early on. So I was able to steal a game kind of early, winning game 1, and then since they're a slow setup deck and I'm a very grindy deck, I was able to make sure the game 2 wouldn't finish. Sure. So I won 03 of them, and then the other one he bricked turns game 2, so I just donked him. But everything else was just Zoroark decks, which were honestly fairly easy. And then the one Archie's Choice deck where I either set up Garbotoxin or Trash Lance. Either of the Garbodors set up, and I won the game. So, yeah.
Yeah, in my 9 rounds, I played versus 8 Zoroark decks and one Sylveon deck. I started off 6-0-1 and then ID'd the last 2 Zoroark decks, even though they were pretty okay matchups, which isn't my normal strategy. I would normally try to go 8-0-1 and do as best as possible, but this time I went with the old Azul, just get to day 2 routine, and it worked out, so it's fine. The Sylveon, when I sat down against it, I actually thought it was going to be pretty tough, but game 1, he just ended up discarding a ton of items by the end of it, and then I just trash-lanched a few times in a row and won. And then game 2, it was like already 40 minutes in, so it was just too difficult for him to deck me in time.
Nice.
And so day 1 was relatively uneventful, but it was kind of what I expected to do.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to go against 8 Zoroark decks, and I think that's just kind of a statement of like how powerful that card is and how big it is, especially in the expanded format. And we'll kind of touch on the state of the expanded format by the end of this and what your guys' opinion on that is. But so going into day 2, Brad finishing at 2nd seed, I believe, correct? At 8-1?
Yeah, I think so.
And then Jimmy, you were at 6-0-3, correct?
Yeah.
So how did you get, once you guys saw the final standings for day 1, 38 Masters heading into day 2, what were some of the things you were worried about heading into the second day of the tournament? Jimmy, you can start with this one.
Well, I obviously wanted to avoid getting 33rd to 38th place because that's just like the worst thing ever that can happen. But after seeing the other decks that were in day 2, it was like almost all Zoroark and like a few Night March, so and along with a couple of Shock Lock as well, which is an auto win. So I was pretty confident that most of us would make it to top 8. And my main concern was just hitting into each other because that matchup is just like one. It's honestly probably our hardest matchup in day 2, and then it's just like a really annoying matchup to play as well. So, but that didn't happen, so it all went pretty well.
Oh yeah,
you played Igor, right?
I played Igor, but we just ID'd. Yeah.
Yeah, there were several times we all had the same match points, and we all could have hit each other, but we got pretty lucky. Jimmy got the luckiest of us most of the time because he would down pair to Shock Lock when we were all at the same points. But, yeah.
Cool. And Brad, was there anything like you heading into day 2 you were worried about not wanting to see?
Well, Drew was the only Wailord who ended up making it to day 2, and I mean, even though I felt like I could still probably tie the matchup, I just didn't want to bother playing it. Everything else seemed pretty fine. I was also above his points currently, so as long as I won my game, it didn't matter. I wouldn't be able to hit him. So I wasn't too concerned. I just wanted to, not brick against Zoroark, and I felt pretty confident I would top 8.
And Jimmy, were you gonna say something there?
I was just saying, yeah, the down pair to the Shock Lock was like super nice because it was like very unlikely that I would get down paired and he would also get up paired, and like it was probably the only chance in the tournament that we would hit each other. And it's just like the freest matchup of all time. Just put a tool in a Garbodor and you like instantly win. Yeah. But he was a good sport about it. It was a pretty funny match though.
Did you play against JP or against Ross?
I played against JP, and he was like, he went first game 1 and evolved into a Raichu, and was like, oh, you're paralyzed. There's no way you can win now. No way you can get out of this. And was just like cackling like a crazy person. But he was super funny, and it was a good time.
Hey, I guess that's the best way to go about it. When you hit a bad matchup, you just got to kind of make light of the situation and, remind yourself that you're playing Pokemon because you enjoy the game, right? So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So day 2, Jimmy kind of talked about, that one matchup already, but do you guys want to hit on any, eventful games, things that stood out? I know, Jimmy, you got streamed at least once. Brad, did you get streamed day 2 at all?
No, just day 1.
Okay. Jimmy, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I did get streamed, which is it was one of my only individual game losses of the tournament. I lost game 1 to him, going T2, Bloodthirsty Eyes up your Drampa, and then knock it out with a Zoroark. which was super rough. He then knocked
Yeah.
out a Lele on the next turn, and it was a shame. But I did come back and win game 2 and 3. Another funny thing about day 2 is I actually dunked 2 people with Tauros. I went first against a Garbodor or a Gardevoir, put a DC on my active Tauros, and then like did my thing Sycamore, etc. pass. And then he drew and immediately conceded. He had nothing to do and only had a Remoraid active.
Oh man.
So that was a doozy. And then I played against a Night March, Finnegan Lynch, who started Zorua, and then Trainer's Mailed, failed it, puzzle time, check his top 3, pass. And then I Sycamored into DC, Ultra Ball, Floatstone, and dunked him with Tauros as well.
Oh man. That's gotta feel good. Brad, did you come away with
Oh,
any
yeah.
Tauros dunks on the weekend?
I did not. No.
It seems like a rare thing to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was pretty nice when it did.
Yeah. I know the night before the tournament you guys were toying with the idea of going down to just 3 Floatstone in the deck. I bet at that point, Jimmy, you were definitely happy to have the 4 copies to find them in those situations.
Yeah, the entire tournament, I was thankful that I had the 4 Floatstones. It was super nice.
And Tauros was one of the bigger reasons, too, why we ended up keeping the 4s, because if you wanted to ever attack with Tauros turn 1, you needed float.
Right.
Usually, so.
For sure. And I'll also ask as well, you guys did have 3 GX attack options here in the deck. You've got Drampa GX's Big Wheel, you've got Tauros GX's Mad Bull GX, and then also Tapu Lele's Tapu Cure GX. I would imagine you guys didn't utilize Tapu Cure too often, but I do want to ask, of the other 2, which one did you guys find yourself using the most often?
Big wheel.
Big Wheel?
Yeah, I would say Big Wheel. Whenever I started with Tauros, my opponent generally like never actually hit into it. They would kind of tiptoe around it or just like pass.
Right.
Which, while that doesn't activate Mad Bull, it's like super good for me because it gives me a ton of time, and Horn Attack doing 60 or 90 a turn is super strong. So I would say I Big Wheeled more often than I Mad Bulled, but the few times where I did get to Mad Bull, it was like super strong. Like I got to kill a Golisopod with like a DC and a Grass on it, and it's very nice.
Yeah, doing like 600 damage or something like that with a Mad Bull.
Yep.
Yes. The threat of it was almost better than the attack itself a lot of the time. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting, that kind of dynamic, that even though you didn't, necessarily end up always using it, just the threat of having that option made your opponent play around it, and it affected the way that they approached the game. So, so heading into top 8, you guys see your names up there, as well as Igor, who also played the deck. Azul, unfortunately, couldn't pull it through in day 2, but it's pretty good conversion rate. 5 people go into the tournament with the deck list with the same 60 cards. 4 of them make day 2, and 3 of them make it into top 8. So that's a testament to not only your skills as players, but also the deck building and metagaming that you guys were able to do at the tournament. So congratulations there. And we'll move on and talk about top 8 now. Brad, do you want to talk about your top 8 matchup?
Yeah, sure. So when we all played, Jose and I think Kid were streamed. So me, Jimmy, and Igor sat on the same side of the table, and all after the coin flip, Igor mentioned that we all were going second, which was very unfortunate because in the Zorg matchup, we're definitely favored, but going first is a pretty big deal because if you're going first, the turn 2 Garbodor means they never get to trade versus the one turn of them blowing up, trading, Skyfield, knocking out literally whatever they want is a huge difference in how the game plays out. So we all went second. The same basic thing happened to me. I got my Trebuchets out and everything on my first turn, but then he blew up, killed my Drampa, and then after that you have to hit, in Garbatox in parallel, and then ideally something to actually attack with. Otherwise, you're just falling way, way, way too far behind. And I'm pretty sure I actually did hit it, but they're able to draw out of it with their field blower puzzles, things like that. So if you're going second and they're able to blow up on you, it's very, very hard to deal with still. So I lost a relatively close game 1 because he was able to do a lot of that without burning too many trainers. So Trash Lane never really came online. And then game 2, I had to turn to Garbatox in parallel, and I was pretty much in control the entire game. There was never really a situation where I felt like I was going to lose. Then game 3, I opened Rob Bridget, did my thing, but then I drew pass for a couple turns. So he was able to, do his own thing, play out his turns and everything, when I was able to not do anything to disrupt him. So I just lost fairly quickly.
That is unfortunate. It does feel bad whenever it comes that way with not drawing cards there at the end. But
Yeah. I mean, our deck was definitely clunkier than Zor's because we didn't have access to trade and stuff like that to burn through our deck. But like,
Sure.
yeah, it's obviously still unfortunate to have happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, still, you're making top 8 at the largest regionals of all time is no accomplishment to be undermined. So, congrats on that. Jimmy, do you want to talk about your top 8 matchup?
Sure. Yeah. I went second in game 1, as mentioned before. He T2 killed my active Drampa that I had to big wheel with, but my hand was pretty good at this point, even though he ended me as well as killing the Drampa. So I put up my second Drampa, I put energy on it, I evolved my Trubbish with a tool on it into Garbodor, I paralleled him, and then I end, and I hit another Trubbish to bench, and I hit a Choice Band for my Drampa, so I Righteous Edge for 50, which is like the ideal response. But then that turn, he red carded my hand, gets us the whole thing away except for a Psychic Energy, blowered, like double puzzled, got the knockout again, and I just conceded as soon as I drew my top deck, and it wasn't something that helped. And then game 2 was a lot closer. At the end of the game, he only had one Zoroark in play, so he gets me, trying to stop me from being able to trash lanch it because he had 11 items in his discard, and he hit my whole hand except for 2 energy. And I had a Choice Band in there that was going to let me knock out the Zoroark, but then I top decked a Choice Band. Ooh. So I was able to knock out the Zoroark. And his only option was to Guzma up my Garbodor, bench a Zorua, and hope I couldn't get out of it. But I got a Sycamore off my prize, so I Sycamored needing one of my 2 Floatstones in deck or the Dowsing Machine, and I whiffed it. And he had game on his turn by Guzma again, take a knockout with Zoroark. And then I flipped over my top 4 cards, and it was Floatstone, Dowsing Machine, useless card, and then another Floatstone. So it was a shame, yeah. But it happens. And I mean, Isaiah, despite getting super lucky, Isaiah played very well and was easily probably my best Zoroark opponent in the tournament. So awesome. It's not anything against him. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if you're gonna end up losing, it might as well be to someone who put up the best fight of the day. So
yep.
And same thing to you, Jimmy. Congratulations, top 8, largest regionals ever. I know you guys are both competitive. You both want more. You want it all, but
oh, for sure.
It's no accomplishment to be understated there. Coming away $750 richer, 100 championship points, correct? So
yep.
How does that put you guys as far as your Worlds invite? I believe you both had your invite coming into the weekend already, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm at 632 points now.
And Brad?
Yeah, I'm at I think 550. Jimmy sent me a spreadsheet yesterday.
You're at 554.
554.
And in terms of the top 16 ranks, as soon as I did everything correct, I'm in 9th place and Brad's in 15th. But despite being in only 15th place, there's actually a massive gap between him and 18th or 20th place. So he can't fall too low.
And I do have a League Cup finish still, as long as I can find one in the next week or 2.
Yeah, so as long as you do well at the League Cup and then the St. Louis, I think you'll be good for the Brazil stipend as well. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So next thing I want to ask you guys, coming away from the tournament, kind of taking a step back, looking back at the weekend, we saw Zoroark GX just be absolutely dominant. Even you guys coming into the tournament with a deck tooled to beat it, it still comes out on top. Just kind of a testament to how strong the deck is in general. All of top 8 was 5 Zoroark decks and then 3 copies of this deck, this 60 cards. So what do you guys think about the state of the expanded format at this current time? Are you a fan of it? Do you dislike it? Do you think it's kind of a little less skill intensive than standard, maybe a little more degenerate? I know there's been a lot of conversation on social media this week about a lot of people being very vocally against expanded. Do you guys have any strong opinions either way?
Zoroark just makes the format really uninteractive, and it's very hard to actually build a deck that beats Zoroark. And Zoroark can definitely adapt to beat Garbodor in the future. I'm almost certain I would have had a miserable time having to play Zoroark mirror matches all day. It's not something that I want to do. And I think that Pokemon should seriously consider taking steps towards making Zoroark not so dominant, either banning it or banning Execute or Skyfield or some of its partners or doing something, because it's really getting out of hand in both formats.
Sure.
I agree. So I do like expanded as a format, at least the idea of it, but I wish Pokemon would take more steps to it. obviously, there aren't, some of the cards aren't too oppressive or anything, but just to shake up the meta a little bit, how Magic does with their modern tournaments. They have, 20 some odd cards banned or something like that, which aren't fully necessary, but it does make it better. So even though going into the tournament, I didn't think Zoroark needed to be banned, I would have liked it to be banned, just so it would not be a bunch of Zoroark mirrors.
So do you think, looking at the next set, maybe something like Glaceon GX with that, ability being able to shut down your opponent's Pokemon GX and EX abilities, do you think that's something that can maybe stand a chance against Zoroark and slow it down, or is that not enough to really fix the issue?
No, I don't think it's good enough.
The issue with Glaceon is that Glaceon is also like a very oppressive card. Like, the best partner for Glaceon is Zoroark, and people need to wake up and realize that. Like, I'm going to put my Glaceon active, and then you're not going to be able to bridge it, and on my turn, I'm going to evolve into multiple Zoroarks, trade, and it's going to get out of hand very quickly. So I think that Glaceon is honestly just another reason that Zoroark is, like, just going to be ridiculously broken. And I think Glaceon's a card that I think that Pokemon will very likely end up having to take a look at.
I don't think Glaceon's too good just because I don't think its attack is very good. I don't think, like, the whole concept with it is, going to be played out similarly to the Zoroark decks or like Golisopod, where you want to swing, Acerola swing, but you can't really do that as well with Glaceon without access to cards like Aqua Patch or something like that. So
yeah,
if it had another attack, I could see it being very oppressive, but as it stands, I don't know if it's actually that good.
Okay.
But see, like, if I'm going first and I turn one Glaceon on you and you don't get to bridge it, you're probably not attacking into me right away, which will give me time to attach energy. Like,
right.
I don't know.
I mean, but with them in standard,
DC
I feel like they will.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems very strong, but I haven't tested anything.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. But I think like just the concept of printing cards like Glaceon and Trevenant are things that I think Pokemon should really, really think about before they do.
Sure.
I agree.
Because it's almost like releasing like a big T-Rex to go get like a smaller T-Rex.
Yeah.
To like stop Zoroark, they print like Glaceon, but Glaceon's like also problematic. So.
Interesting. Yeah.
I would much prefer them ban Zoroark instead of printing cards that just straight beat Zoroark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like Pokemon doesn't want to have to ban anything, obviously, because that's kind of like an admission of messing up, right? And I think that's kind of what we've seen, at least since I've been playing the game. I only started playing at the like fall of 2015. It just seems like whatever becomes the best deck or the best card, Pokemon bans something that's directly good against that specific thing. So we saw Garbodor be very good in Guardians Rising, so they print Gardevoir, which everyone believes has like a theoretically very good matchup against it at the World Championships. And then going, well, Brad proved us wrong this weekend, obviously, but then going on from there, like Gardevoir was so oppressive and so strong for a while at the beginning of this standard format. Now they print all this metal support in the new set, so it's just kind of like releasing counters to what they see as good. I mean, same thing with, Night March last season. Everyone complained about how great Night March, or 2 seasons ago, sorry, how great Night March was, and then they come out with Karen thinking like, oh, this is going to be a great counter and just totally slow this archetype down. Obviously now with the new tools it has, it doesn't really, but I don't know. It's just interesting, the mentality, I think, behind the card making process. It just seems a lot different. People who've been watching my channel know I've been going back and covering some retro decks, and I can kind of see the difference in style of, using these older decks from like the 2010 format and 2006, all these years past, and what is happening in today's format. So, I don't know. It's just interesting.
I think another thing that Pokemon shouldn't be afraid to do is to ban cards in Expanded and still have them legal and Standard, or ban them in Standard and still have them legal and Expanded.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that in some form, like, I think that Zoroark in Standard is like slightly better or slightly like more okay to have than in Expanded, because in Expanded it's got like Skyfield and Gets and Execute and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I also really think they shouldn't look at it as messing up. Like, Execute was printed like 5 years ago or like 4 years ago or something like that now. And I don't think they could have known that it was going to be like a huge problem with Zoroark. So I really don't think they should look at it as like, oh, we messed up and we don't want to admit that. Like, I think they should just be like, okay, we want to make our game as fair and as skillful as possible.
Sure.
So that's just my 2 cents on the whole ban situation.
No,
I agree.
Okay, so moving forward from Expanded, eyes shifted towards Australia. Or what is the next tournament going to be for each of you guys? Next major tournament, I should say.
Australia is my next major tournament. I've got a League Cup this weekend that I'm looking forward to, but it's not very important. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm skipping Australia again like I did last year, and so St. Louis will be my next tournament.
Okay, so Jimmy, are you looking to be testing something at your League Cup that you're considering for Australia, or are you just kind of playing it safe, or maybe playing Australia play a little close to the chest, not going to be revealing it at League Cup maybe?
I might have a little bit of a juice deck saved for Australia. And I certainly won't be playing anything spicy at my League Cup this weekend. I've been playing Gliscod Garbodor.
Yeah.
And in Virginia, I would have expected people to counter me by now, showing up with things like Volcanion for the next event. But here in Florida, people haven't really gotten to that point yet. And I've just been playing Gliscod Garbodor at every cup. So I might just roll up with that again and see how it goes. I do have a second and a top 4 with it so far. But if I get there and things look a little bit worse for it, I might switch on to something like Gliscod Zork. I'm a big fan of Gliscod right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, moving towards St. Louis, the new set, I'm sure Jimmy hasn't thought too much about it. I'm not sure that Brad has thought too much about it yet, but have you guys had a chance to look at the new set? Any, just real quick, like a card or two that stands out to you from the new set that you think is going to be really good?
So I did look at the scans last night, finally. I didn't pay too much attention to a lot of the Pokemon, but obviously Cynthia and Palpat seem to be like automatic inclusions in almost every deck in the standard format. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't look too much at the Pokemon to see how good they will be, but those 2 cards are something that definitely caught my eye.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it a ton, but Cyrus looks good, Glaceon GX look good, and like Brad said, Cynthia and Palpat both look very good. And it's funny because Palpat used to be like, haha, look at that stupid Palpat, like it's so useless. But then we saw Palpat like slowly making its way into like lock decks. Like we saw Dean and Ross Cawthon play it in their Lurantis Vileplume.
Yep.
And people were like, oh, that's cute because like you can Ace Roll the Vileplume, or not Ace Roll, at the time it was AZ.
Yep.
And then you can Palpat them back in. And then it made its way into, I think it's in Shocklock, because you have the never decking out plan where you can just repeatedly put AZ into the deck at the end. You can pick it up with, I think it's actually just called Pickup with Lillipup's Attack.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But
I know
now,
they played it in Daytona. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the list from this tournament, so I'm not sure if they played it at this one, but they definitely played Palpat in Daytona.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw it against JP.
Okay.
But it's funny because it's in those like meme decks kind of, but now we'll see it play a big part of the format, I think. Just because you don't have Via Seeker, and cutting a Guzma or cutting an Ace Rolla for it gives you like a better late game, despite it not being as great in the early game.
Yep.
Yeah. I also think a lot of the X Garbodor decks, like Buzzwole Garbodor, Golisopod Garbodor, things like that, have been good throughout the year, but at the same time, they just have kind of weak late games. I think bringing Palpat into that helps those decks a lot, and then also adding another really good draw supporter in the form of Cynthia can help those decks a lot as well. So we'll see kind of how that shapes up heading over towards St. Louis. So thank you guys so much for taking a little time out of your evenings to come on and talk about this deck. Congrats once again. I know I've said it a few times, but
thank you.
Congratulations on your finishes. I'll give you guys a second here to do any plugs. You can talk about any social medias, teams, any shout outs, anything like that you want to give. The floor is yours. Go ahead and take it away, Jimmy.
Yeah, shout out to my team, CCG Castle. We're the best team in the game. Sorry, Brad. And then we also have TC Evolutions. And, people might be like, oh, he's just saying that because he's sponsored. But no, I actually really like the dice. I used to refuse to carry dice around. I had to carry a lot of them around, and I felt like they were very easy to lose. My opponents would take them. But now I'm a huge fan of the TC Evolutions dice. They're really easy to use. You don't even need that many of them because there's such high numbers on the dice. And then if my opponent tries to take one, I'm like, bro, that's clearly mine. Like, you don't have any of them. And I like the feel of them. It's very nice. So I would definitely recommend them. I saw a post in Hey Fonte recently being like, are they worth it? And I haven't gotten around to posting on that yet, but I would definitely say they are worth it. Like, they're super strong. I like them a lot.
Sure.
I know Jimmy says you can't take them, but I have one of his blue dice, and he doesn't know.
He does have one of Igor's blue dice, yes. But for the most part, I haven't lost very many of them, and I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Brad, any thing on your end? Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, someone's PC. I may not be the one writing most of the articles, but there are a lot of good articles for me. I will also, TC Evolutions, I do agree with Jimmy. And peep out my girl's stream, twitch.tv/AzulGG.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and speaking of articles, I do have an article coming out in 2 days on 6 prizes talking about my deck that I played this weekend, and also I am going to look at Australia, probably taking a look at Gliscod Garbodor, because it's my current favorite deck in Standard. and we'll see how things go in Australia.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on once again. Guys, feel free to check out all of the social medias, all that stuff for these guys. Links will be in the description. Check out those articles and all those things. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram at TrainerChip. And you can also check out my articles on someone'spc.com. Link is always in the description of the video. Jimmy, Brad, thank you guys once again for coming on. And that is going to do it for us, guys. And until next time, take care.